This video is brought to you by Harry's Razors. They're razors. They're good razors. What else do you want? Blade Runner 2049 is a rare example of a fantastic sequel that expands upon the legacy of the previous film by paying homage, but also bringing the universe forward in a big way. So as always, let's take a spoiler-filled look at all the Easter eggs and references linking back to the first film, including familiar locations, people, technology, what happened in the 30 years in between stories, the progression of the replicant models, and a definitive answer as to whether or not Deckard is himself a replicant, or as definitive as, you can get. Which is to say, not very definitive at all. Right, so in terms of links to the first film, we get the inclusion or reference to artificial animals. We're not really sure if Deckard's dog is artificial or not, and even if it is, it's unlikely that he even cares. 2049 also includes a Blade Runner investigation leading to the head of a robotics company, this time Neander Wallace, as opposed to Aldon Tyrell. An enhancement sequence is present again. It's used to discover that the bones found under a dead tree were from a replicant that gave birth to a child. Spinners are back, the flying cars that are used as the primary mode of transportation in this universe, as well as a new version of the Voight Kampf test. This newer model is handheld and only requires the user to examine the subject's eye, as opposed to asking a series of tortoise-related moral conundrums. We actually even hear the audio of the test Deckard administered to Rachael 30 years prior. This world also continues the idea of a used universe that Ridley Scott fell in love with after seeing the original Star Wars. Star Wars, get ready for the first Star Wars, man!
I basically said to my producer, I don't know what we're doing. This guy's making Star Wars. I'm not even in the same universe. I'm not even in the same century.
The opening sequence of 2049 is also a scrapped scene from the original film, though it plays out a little differently. Originally, Blade Runner was to open with Rick Deckard sitting in a farmhouse with a pot boiling on the stove. The day gets darker and darker until eventually the farmer who lives there comes home. He ignores Deckard, starts stirring the soup in the pot and says, "Do you want any soup?" And then, "Who are you with anyway?" Deckard then says, "I'm Deckard, Blade Runner," and shoots the man dead. He then removes the man's jaw, which appears to be metal, with an ID number on it, revealing that this farmer was a replicant all along, before turning to the camera and saying, "Just another day at the office for me, Rick Deckard, robot catcher." Okay, so that last bit is not true, but the rest is, and you can see how it heavily influences the new film. The Vegas sequence, one of the most visually stunning in the movie, actually takes inspiration from a dust storm in Sydney that occurred in 2009, with cinematographer Roger Deakins confirming this recently. That sequence also weirdly lines up with some of the dialogue in that first Voight Kampf test from the original film, and how Deckard is using this area to hide out.
You're in a desert, walking along in the sand when all of a sudden...
Is this the test now?
Yes. You're in a desert, walking along in the sand when all of a sudden you look...
What one?
What?
What desert?
Doesn't make any difference what desert. Is completely hypothetical.
But how come I'd be there?
Maybe you're fed up. Maybe you want to be by yourself. Who knows?
Big glowing billboards are back, though a lot of the flat screen stuff is out and giant holograms are in. We see the return of some familiar product placement, including Coca-Cola and Atari, because in this alternate look at the future, Atari is still a powerhouse and hasn't been struck by the Blade Runner curse. That being, most of the companies advertised in the first film, with the exception of Coke, suffered significant losses, and many of them no longer exist or are a shadow of their former selves. There's a number of returning locales that show up again in this new film, including the Tyrell Pyramid, which is now owned by Neander Wallace. It's also lit up significantly less than the last time we saw it, potentially as a result of the blackout that occurred in between films, and how a lot of companies are reverting back to physical record keeping because of how much information was lost. But speaking of, there's an anime short film called Blade Runner Blackout 2022 that follows two Nexus 8 models who set off an EMP in order to wipe the Tyrell records clean of any replicants so that they can go into hiding. As a result of this, replicant technology was outlawed until Neander Wallace was able to design a seemingly totally compliant model. Discrimination is still rife though towards synthetic beings, with Agent K being referred to as a skin job and a tin soldier, among other things. Gaff is one of two living characters from the original film who returns, the other being Deckard. He's retired from service and appears to be living in some kind of aged care facility. He still loves his bloody origami like he did in the first film, and he's seen crafting a sheep. No doubt a reference to the children's book, Where is the Green Sheep? Or the lesser known story, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, of which Blade Runner is based upon. He also throws in a few city speak terms, like he does in the original. which is a language I'll let bored Harrison Ford explain.
That gibberish he talked was city speak, gutter talk, a mishmash of Japanese, Spanish, German, what have you.
Alright, I want to touch on some of the Nexus models that we know of. In the Blade Runner video game on PC from 1997, which funnily enough there's a video of on my channel, which I'll link to at the end.
Nice knickerbockers, by the way. You look like you should be chasing Robin Williams through Jumanji.
It said that the Nexus models 4 and 5 would just give up when cornered. This is as opposed to the Nexus 6s, as seen in the first film, which will fight for survival and wanted to extend their 4-year lifespan. It's unknown whether these models age like the follow-up versions, although it seems unlikely, seeing as they have a definitive death date. It's thought that Deckard, if a replicant, which I'll get into in a bit, could be a Nexus 7 model, a type of android whose strength and intelligence is comparable to that of a human. Rachael is probably some variation on a 7 also, though it's also thought she's some kind of prototype model, seeing as she's able to procreate. Dave Bautista is a Nexus 8, a version that's capable of aging like a normal human being. His age actually nearly cost him the role. And Gosling is a 9, a supposedly more compliant and advanced version. All of the replicant models after 6 are given memories, either falsified or created, that allow them to think and act as humans would. The reason that the Nexus 6 models struggled to pass a Voight-Kampff test is because their experiences only date back 4 years max, so they don't have the memories to lean on in order to formulate stable responses. Hey, I'm doing an ad. Look, I'm not broke by any stretch, but I require money to live, especially when YouTube can be demonetized at any point, seemingly for no reason. Okay, Harry Shavers are a top quality brand at an extremely affordable price, considering what you get and when you compare them to a store-bought brand, which I find do not last nearly as long. You can actually get a free trial set that's $13 of value when you sign up and cover the very small cost of shipping. This includes a weighted ergonomic razor handle, 5 precisely engineered blades with a lubricating strip and a trimmer blade, a rich lathering shave gel, and a travel blade cover. You can get all this by visiting harrys.com/Mr. Sunday Movies. It's a great deal. It's well worth it. That's harrys.com/Mr. Sunday Movies. It also helps me out by supporting the channel. Okay, so it's thought by some that the replicants in this scene are a nod to the engineers from Prometheus, though I'm not really so sure that's the case. The Alien and Blade Runner universes, they are definitively connected, and even though I'm probably mistaken, at some point in 2049, I saw a structure that very closely resembled the Colonial Marine ship from Aliens. Another sort of returning character to the universe is a recreation of Rachael, though she's not the exact same version, and it's unlikely that she'd have any of Rachael's memories, as she was probably created from her remains. Also, this version of Rachael doesn't have green eyes, a flaw that Deckard was quick to point out. Right, so, Deckard, he's back. Still drinking whiskey, still carrying the gun from the first film, still being a bit of a bloody grump. If you went into this movie looking for definitive answers as to whether or not he's a replicant, well, the solution to that is we still do not know. If he is a replicant, it'd be a similar model to Rachael, which would explain why he's able to father a child. However, perhaps his child is part replicant, part human, seeing as a lot of Rachael's makeup is biological. Neander Wallace theorizes to Deckard, though it could have been a bluff, that his love for Rachael was manufactured, all under the guise to see whether two replicants could fall in love and produce a child. Deckard refutes this by saying he knows what's real, which doesn't necessarily mean that he's not an android. He could just be of the belief that his feelings are genuine. I think a big point of this film was, like the last, I mean not the last because the last was Soldier, but you know, Blade Runner, is that it's really up to the audience. Even those involved in the films don't agree. Ridley Scott insists he's a replicant. Harrison Ford says he isn't. And the director of 2049 leans towards him not being, at least in the first film. The reality is, it's really supposed to be up to your own interpretation. I tend to lean towards him being one, from the evidence presented in the first film, more so than the second, but I think it's supposed to come across irrelevant as to whether or not he is. Because even if he is biomechanical, he has the same feelings, desires, and drive to live as a human being. So who are we to say? Who are any of us to say? Actually, you know what? Do you think he's a replicant? I genuinely want to know. Because I'm not sure. Because if you leave a comment, any comment, you can win a loot crate like this person. If you are this person, just private message me these details, and it's all yours. Also, I have a podcast called The Weekly Planet where we talk movies and comics and TV shows. This Monday, we're getting stuck in, spoilers and all, to Blade Runner 2049. The good, the bad, all of it. But here's a clip from a recent episode with pictures and all.
Jim Carrey went up to him in a restaurant and he said the blood drained from Tommy Lee Jones's face in such a way that I realized that he was in pain or something. And he got up, kind of shaking, hugged me and said, "I hate you. I really don't like you." And I was like, wow, okay, what's going on, man?
And he said, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." It says the night before a big scene. He's probably wearing a t-shirt that says, ask me about being the Riddler in Batman Forever or something.
Did you say ask me about?
Yeah, I'll probably ask me about, yeah. At that point in his career, Jim Carrey was probably, what would happen is the doors of the restaurant would open and like the back end of a bull would roll in on wheels and then he would emerge from it. Pet Detective style, and fireworks would go off.
And just to clarify, there's videos here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Subscribe if you want to check out any of those, including a breakdown of the new The Last Jedi trailer, which is being released this Monday. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Take care.